You look like a man who appreciates good whiskey.
Introducing a masterpiece of craftsmanship, the Four Roses Bourbon Whiskey.
Imperial Whiskey.
The liquor industry has seen many iconic brands rise to fame, only to fade into obscurity. From the beloved Four Roses to the once renowned Calvert Reserve, these names once dominated the shelves. But why did they vanish? Join us as we explore 20 famous liquor brands that faded into history.
Four Roses American Bourbon Whiskey.
Four Roses, a bourbon brand founded in 1888 by Paul Jones Jr., became a well-known name in the U.S. during the 1930s to 50s. It was loved for its smooth, rich flavor with hints of fruit and spice, making it a favorite among bourbon fans. The brand's popularity grew, making it one of the top-selling bourbons in America. However, in the late 50s, Seagram, which had bought Four Roses in 1943, decided to change direction. They stopped selling Four Roses Kentucky Straight Bourbon in the U.S. and instead promoted a blended whiskey under the same name. This blended version, made mostly of neutral grain spirits, did not appeal to American consumers, causing its popularity to decline. The original bourbon continued to be produced but was only sold in Europe and Asia, where it remained popular.
It's my secret.
Everybody's talking about you.
Style in the city. I.W. Harper.
I.W. Harper, founded in 1872 by Isaac Wolf Bernheim, gained prominence as a bourbon brand in the mid-20th century. It was well loved for its smooth, rich flavor, featuring notes of caramel and vanilla, and became a favorite among bourbon enthusiasts. The brand reached its peak popularity in the 1950s, becoming a household name in the U.S. and internationally. However, I.W. Harper's presence in the U.S. market declined in the late 20th century after being sold to Diageo, which shifted its focus to international markets. As a result, I.W. Harper bourbon was no longer available in the U.S., leading to a drop in domestic popularity, though it continued to be produced and sold overseas. In 2015, I.W. Harper made a comeback in the U.S., reintroducing its classic bourbon to a new generation of whiskey lovers. Old Crow, created by Dr. James C. Crow in the 1830s, became a legendary bourbon in American whiskey history. It was famous for its use of the sour mash process and was known for its smooth, rich flavor with caramel and vanilla notes. In the mid-20th century, Old Crow became very popular, attracting notable figures like President Ulysses S. Grant and the writer Mark Twain. However, its success declined in the late 20th century. A major production mistake in the 1960s changed its taste, causing a loss of consumer trust. Additionally, changes in ownership and market strategies further hurt its reputation. In 1987, Jim Beam bought the brand, discontinued the original formula, and introduced a new recipe. Old Mr. Boston, started in 1933 by Irwin Red Benjamin and Hyman C. Berkowitz, quickly became popular in American bars and homes. It was known for its wide selection of spirits, including gin, bourbon, rum, and especially its flavored schnapps. The schnapps, with flavors like peach and peppermint, were especially loved for their sweet, smooth taste, making them a favorite in cocktails and mixed drinks. In the mid-20th century, Old Mr. Boston's unique bottles and extensive product line made it a well-known brand. However, its popularity began to wane in the 1980s. Changes in ownership and market strategies, along with growing competition, led to a decline in its market presence. By 1986, the distillery had shut down and the brand was eventually sold off. As Old Mr. Boston's popularity declined, could another whiskey brand have faced a similar fate? Let's explore the rise and fall of Calvert Reserve. Calvert Reserve was a popular blended whiskey brand in the U.S. during the mid-20th century. It was made by the Calvert Distilling Company, which was founded in the early 1900s. The brand became very well known in the 40s and 50s for its smooth and balanced flavor. Calvert Reserve was a mix of different whiskeys, offering a rich taste with hints of caramel and vanilla, making it a favorite among whiskey lovers. The whiskey was especially popular after World War II, when Americans were looking for quality drinks to celebrate and relax. However, its popularity started to decline in the 70s and 80s Due to changing taste and the rise of other whiskey brands, the brand also faced challenges when larger corporations took over and restructured the company, leading to its eventual discontinuation.
Men will be men. Seagram's Imperial Blue Superior Grain Whiskey.
Imperial whiskey was a popular blended whiskey in the U.S. during the mid-20th century. Produced by Hiram Walker & Sons, a company established in the late 1800s, it became well-liked in the 1950s and 60s for its smooth and mellow flavor. The blend featured a mix of different whiskeys, offering a balanced taste with hints of caramel and oak. It was a common choice for many Americans, often enjoyed at social gatherings and celebrations. However, in the 70s and 80s, its popularity started to decline as consumer preferences shifted and new whiskey brands emerged. The company also faced stiff competition from both domestic and international brands, which led to a decrease in sales. Despite its once strong presence, Imperial whiskey eventually faded from the spotlight due to these changing market dynamics.
Let's talk about this James E. Pepper that comes in this beautiful decanter bottle.
James E. Pepper whiskey was a historic brand with deep roots in American whiskey history. Founded by Elijah Pepper in 1780, the brand gained prominence when his grandson, James E. Pepper, took over in the late 19th century. James E. Pepper was famous for his bold promotion and high-quality bourbon, which he claimed was the best in the U.S. The whiskey had a rich and robust flavor, often described as smooth with hints of caramel and vanilla, making it a favorite among bourbon lovers. The brand reached its peak in the early 1900s, with its distillery in Lexington, Kentucky, being one of the largest in the country. However, the brand struggled during Prohibition and never fully recovered. Despite a brief comeback, the distillery closed in 1958 due to changing taste, increased competition, and economic difficulties. As we wrap up the intriguing journey of James E. Pepper whiskey, what makes another historic bourbon like Cream of Kentucky so compelling? Let's explore the legacy and revival of this classic bourbon next. Cream of Kentucky bourbon was first introduced in 1888 by I. Traeger & Company from Cincinnati, Ohio. It became quite popular in the 1940s, partly due to Norman Rockwell's memorable advertisements. Known for its double-rich flavor, the bourbon was praised for its creamy mouthfeel and hints of vanilla and baking spices, which made it a favorite among whiskey lovers. In 1933, Schenley Distillers Corporation acquired the brand just before Prohibition ended. Under Schenley's ownership, Cream of Kentucky thrived and was recognized as a high-quality bourbon. However, by the 1970s, changing consumer taste and rising competition led to its decline, and the last known bottle was produced in 1970. Even though it faded from the market, Cream of Kentucky continued to hold a special place in bourbon history. In 2018, Jim Rutledge revived the brand as a premium product, honoring its storied past. Lord Calvert Canadian Whiskey was launched in 1964 by Seagram's, a well-known Canadian distillery. It was named after George Calvert, the first Lord Baltimore. The whiskey quickly gained popularity in the U.S. because of its smooth, easy-to-enjoy flavor. Known for its light, slightly sweet taste with hints of caramel and vanilla, it became a favorite for both sipping and mixing in cocktails. Throughout the 60s and 70s, Lord Calvert was very popular, especially in America. Its stylish branding and consistent quality made it stand out among other Canadian whiskeys. However, by the 1980s, the brand started to decline. This was due to changes in ownership, growing competition, and a shift in consumer taste towards other types of spirits. As a result, Lord Calvert's presence in the market diminished. Wilson's Whiskey was a popular blended whiskey that became well known in the mid-20th century. Created by Richard Boreman, a pioneering food scientist at the Willowbank Distillery in Dunedin, New Zealand, it was admired for its rich flavors. The whiskey was made with a blend of 70% malted and 30% unmalted barley, giving it a deep golden color and notes of dried fruits, creamy cereals, and honey. This distinctive blend made it a favorite among whiskey lovers. At its height, Wilson's Whiskey was the second best-selling whiskey in New Zealand, trailing only Johnnie Walker. Its smooth, syrupy taste with hints of vanilla and caramel was widely appreciated. Despite its early success, the brand gradually faded. Changes in ownership and the eventual closure of the Willowbank Distillery in the 1990s contributed to its decline. Pikesville Rye was a well-known rye whiskey brand, especially popular in the Mid-Atlantic region. It was first made in 1895 by the Maryland Distilling Company, which Charles Gessner started. This whiskey was famous for its spicy and dry taste, with notes of honey and cloves, making it a favorite among rye whiskey fans. Its pale copper color and dusty cocoa scent added to its special charm. Pikesville Rye was successful before Prohibition, but like many distilleries, it had to close during that time. After Prohibition ended, Pikesville Rye came back and became the only Maryland rye whiskey still in business. Despite its comeback, the brand had trouble keeping up with the changing taste and competition from other spirits. By the 1970s, production in Maryland had stopped. As Pikesville Rye struggled to stay relevant in the changing market, could another bourbon brand have faced a similar fate? Old Taylor Bourbon was a famous bourbon brand named after Colonel Edmund Haynes Taylor Jr., a key figure in American whiskey history. Born in 1832, Taylor was a pioneer in distilling and played a major role in the Bottled in Bond Act of 1897. Old Taylor Bourbon became popular in the mid-20th century, particularly in the 50s and 60s. It was known for its rich, smooth flavor with hints of honey, vanilla, and oak. The bourbon was made at the Old Taylor Distillery, which was designed to look like a medieval castle and attracted many visitors. Despite its early success, Old Taylor Bourbon began to lose its popularity due to changes in ownership and increased market competition. National Distillers owned the brand until 1987, when Jim Beam took over, followed by Sazerac in 2009. The brand struggled to stay relevant and was eventually discontinued. Hiram Walker 10 High Bourbon was introduced in the 1930s by Hiram Walker & Sons. Hiram Walker, who started as a grocery clerk, became well known for making Canadian Club whiskey. The name 10 High Bourbon came from the practice of aging barrels at least 10 racks high, which was thought to improve the bourbon's quality. Bourbon became popular in the mid-20th century, especially the 50s and 60s, and it's known for its smooth, balanced flavor with hints of caramel, vanilla, and oak. However, 10 High Bourbon's popularity began to wane in the late 60s as the American whiskey market faced difficulties. The Peoria Distillery, where it was first made, closed in 1981. Later, changes in ownership and production methods, including a switch to blended bourbon in 2009, hurt its reputation. The brand struggled to compete and eventually faded from prominence. Bellows Bourbon was a well-known bourbon brand in the mid-20th century, especially popular in the 50s and 60s. Produced by Bellows & Company, which Joseph S. Finch had founded in the late 19th century, the bourbon was celebrated for its smooth and rich flavor. It had hints of caramel, vanilla, and oak, making it a favorite among bourbon lovers. The brand gained a strong reputation for its quality and was often enjoyed neat or in classic cocktails like the Old Fashioned. However, Bellows Bourbon began to lose its appeal as larger brands with more aggressive marketing entered the market. The rise of these competitors, combined with changes in consumer taste and economic challenges, led to a decline in Bellows Bourbon's popularity. By the late 80s, the brand had largely disappeared from store shelves, unable to compete with the evolving bourbon industry. As Bellows Bourbon faded from popularity, how did other iconic spirits of the era fare? Let's explore the story of House of Lords Scotch. House of Lords Scotch was a well-liked blended Scotch whiskey in the U.S. during the mid-20th century. It was created by William Whiteley & Company, a company founded by William Whiteley, who was a notable figure in the whiskey industry. Whiteley, born in 1861, started his business after being let go from James Monroe & Sons Limited. House of Lords Scotch gained popularity in the U.S., particularly in the 50s and 60s. The whiskey was known for its smooth and easy drinking character, with flavors of lemon, shortbread, and ginger. It was favored by those who preferred a lighter, more accessible Scotch. However, as consumer taste changed and new whiskey brands emerged, House of Lords Scotch began to lose its appeal. By the 1980s, it had largely disappeared from the market and was no longer widely available. Guggenheimer Rye was a popular rye whiskey brand in the U.S. before rye whiskey fell out of favor. Founded by Asher Guggenheimer, a German immigrant and local liquor dealer, in 1857, the brand thrived in Freeport, Pennsylvania. It became well known in the late 19th and early 20th centuries for its strong, spicy flavor, typical of rye whiskey. Guggenheimer Rye was especially appreciated for its smooth yet bold taste, featuring notes of caramel, spice, and a hint of fruit. It was a common choice in many American homes and bars during its prime. However, as consumer taste shifted and bourbon became more popular, Guggenheimer Rye's popularity began to wane. The whiskey industry's consolidation and the rise of larger brands sealed its fate. By the 1980s, Guggenheimer Rye had disappeared from the market, leaving behind the memory of a once favored rye whiskey. Melrose Rare was a blended whiskey that gained a following in the U.S. during the mid-20th century. Produced by Melrose & Company from Aladdin, Pennsylvania, it was known for its unique blend, featuring a rye mash matured in American white oak barrels, which gave it a distinctive flavor. Popular in the 1950s and 60s, Melrose Rare was cherished for its smooth, slightly sweet taste with hints of caramel and spice. Despite its quality, it never achieved the widespread popularity of larger brands. Its decline started in the 1970s as consumers' taste shifted towards different types of spirits and bigger whiskey brands took over the market. The whiskey industry's consolidation and the rise of new trendy spirits also contributed to its decreasing presence. By the 1980s, Melrose Rare had largely vanished from shelves, though it remained fondly remembered by those who enjoyed its unique flavor. Gold Label Scotch was a blended Scotch whiskey with a modest following in the U.S. during the mid-20th century. Produced by Lombard Brands, based on the Isle of Man, the whiskey was introduced in the 1970s. It was known for its rich, peaty aroma and robust flavor, featuring a smooth, slightly smoky taste with hints of honey and caramel. Despite its quality, Gold Label Scotch never reached the fame of other Scotch brands like Johnnie Walker. Its popularity began to decline in the late 20th century as consumer taste shifted towards different spirits and larger brands took over the market. The whiskey industry also consolidated, and new, trendier spirits emerged, contributing to Gold Label Scotch's diminished presence. As Gold Label Scotch fades from the spotlight, can other mid-century spirits like Board's Gin offer a glimpse into the evolving taste? Let's explore the story behind Board's Gin. Board's Gin was a mid-century spirit with a loyal following, but it never gained the widespread popularity of brands like Tanqueray or Beefeater. The Board family started distilling in the early 20th century, and their gin became well known in the 1950s and 60s. It was celebrated for its smooth and balanced flavor, which was less dominated by juniper compared to other gins, appealing to those who preferred a milder taste. Board's Gin featured a subtle mix of botanicals, giving it a slightly sweet and citrusy character. Despite its unique taste, it struggled to compete with the marketing power and broad distribution of larger brands. As consumer taste shifted towards more robust and heavily marketed gins, Board's Gin gradually disappeared from the market. By the 1980s, it was no longer available on store shelves, though it was fondly remembered by those who appreciated its distinct flavor.